Plow and Pencil, the art of American agriculture, where, like Ike, we recognize that farming looks mighty easy when your plow is a pencil and you're 1,000 miles from the cornfield. The Plow and Pencil podcast will paint a picture of American agriculture today. We will tell the stories of the producers, the products, the policies, and the platforms that provide feed and fuel to our nation and our world. Join the movement of farmers, ranchers, and agriculture advocates plowing new ground, and pencil us into your weekly podcast schedule. This podcast is brought to you by HitchPin.com, the tool thousands of farmers and ranchers are using to buy, sell, hire, and work in agriculture. You guys, we're so excited to have you joining us today for our inaugural episode of Plow and Pencil. We'll be featuring stories of farmers and ranchers from across the country in the upcoming months, but we couldn't think of a better person for our first episode than a farmer and rancher from Abilene, Kansas, our founder and CEO at HitchPin, Trevor McKeeman. We're excited for him to give you the behind the scenes on what it's like to be a founder, an innovator, and to launch a startup that's really revolutionizing agriculture in the 21st century.
Hello, HitchPin community. Welcome to Plow and Pencil, the art of American agriculture. I'm your host, Emily Fink, and I am thrilled to officially welcome you to our podcast. This is something that our team at HitchPin has been dreaming about and planning for months now, and it's so exciting to finally be here. And I cannot think of a more appropriate, more fitting guest for our inaugural episode than our founder, our CEO, and someone who I am just really proud to call my boss and my friend, Trevor McKeeman.
Well, thank you. I'm equally excited about this. I'm looking at the list of guests that you're putting together. I'm thinking, holy cow, this, hopefully I can set at least some bar here, because you've got some amazing people that you're going to talk to, and frankly, just the subject is so fascinating, like how, what makes this sort of agriculture and food production work. And so I'm totally excited about this, and I'm honored to be part of it. So thank you, Emily.
Absolutely. Now, I'm sure for our guests who are used to listening to podcasts and other interviews, you're probably used to hearing a pretty standard introduction, and I'm not saying we won't do those for our future guests. I'm sure we will, but today's special. And, today HitchPin and Ag Marketplace is starting a podcast, right? It's something out of the box, outside our comfort zone. To me, that is Trevor McKeeman, telling the stories of the people who are feeding and fueling our country. Yeah. That is Trevor McKeeman. And so I thought no better way to formally introduce you and welcome you to our podcast and to ask those who know you best to introduce you. So growing up, Trevor worked on the family farm, learning about the hard yet rewarding job of farming. He jokes that they'd start with 5 operational combines at the start of harvest, and by the end, they were fortunate if they still had one running. One might break down and its parts would be used to help keep the others going. He grew up problem solving, seeking resourceful ways to do things, and always trying to optimize efficiency in all that he did. When we were first married, he worked on Capitol Hill.
Oh, I see where this came from.
For the then Representative Jerry Moran. He loved listening to farmers, learning about their needs, and working diligently to make sure that they were being represented well. Trevor truly enjoys helping and connecting people. He's driven to make life easier for producers by streamlining processes and finding ways to connect producers and consumers. This tenacity to make HitchPin successful also comes from the knowledge that the world's population is growing and will need to be fed, and HitchPin can be the vessel to support this global need. Trevor is an amazing person, a loving father and husband who steps back to look at the big picture and works tirelessly on projects in which he is passionate. HitchPin is a company that combines his passions by connecting people, efficiently optimizing processes, and overall working for the greater good. I'm endlessly proud of Trevor, all he has done and continues to do.
Well, you know what you should do is we should go get my wife, and she should do the podcast. She's definitely the better half in this. So that was very kind. And I think it's important. Maybe this is a good time to say it. I was hoping to say it sometime in our podcast, but anytime you're building something like this, it is not a solo effort. I mean, you have to have a tremendous team. You have to have investors, but the one that gets overlooked a lot is just the family. So, you know, we've been married for almost 20 years now, to Leah, and, you know, a good chunk of that 16 plus has been in startups. So she has had to understand what
she is a saint.
She is a saint. She's had to understand the highs and the lows, and I would not be here. And we wouldn't have this opportunity if it wasn't for her support. So that was a surprising introduction, but yeah, thank you for that.
I'm going to start each of these podcasts with a little bit of ag trivia.
Oh,
and I'm going to ask a question here at the beginning, and you can kind of ponder on it throughout our conversation, and then we'll circle back to it at the very end. Okay. So today, here's our ag trivia question. One U.S. farm feeds 166 people annually in the U.S. and abroad. The global population is expected to increase by 2.2 billion by 2050, which means the world's farmers will have to grow about what percentage more food than what is now produced?
Ooh, I like it.
Yes.
I like it.
All right.
Yep.
Noodle on that.
I will do that. We'll try to run the calculations while we're doing this. Yep.
So Leah had a wonderful introduction, gave us a little glimpse into your background.
Yeah.
Tell our listeners, though, in your own words, who is Trevor McKeeman?
Sure. Well, I can kind of say who is Trevor McKeeman and you know, this year, and sort of how did I, you know, how did we get here? And so right now I'm a happily married man with 4 kids. And they range from age 11 to age 5. My youngest just turned 5 a couple of days ago. And, you know, that's, I love that part of it. And to have kids, you know, I grew up in a family that nobody ever called it entrepreneurial. But my folks started a farm in the 1980s. And so my early years were entrepreneurial. You know, the family had some land, but nobody had been a full-time farmer. And so the word entrepreneur was never used growing up, but I look back at it now and that's exactly what it was. And so it's cool for my kids now to have those conversations about, okay, you're going to have to work really hard. Probably harder than a lot of other things you might want to do, but you get to build stuff. And so that's I'm an entrepreneur and a family man, and love farming, love agriculture. The family still farms, and I try to get out as much as I can to do that. And then another love is flying. You know, I have a bush plane, and it's kind of like a Jeep with wings, and so that's something I dearly enjoy doing. So that's where I am today. And then, you know, how did I get here? I grew up in a small town with about 100 people in it. And we had sand streets. It's Talmadge, Kansas, and sand streets. And so one of my first jobs was a paper route, and I would do the paper route on a go-kart, chucking papers and drifting the corners. And, you know, it's kind of a magical place to grow up, because you had a lot of freedom, and obviously we worked a lot as a family, but there was a lot of freedom to that. And so, I think about that. Most of our farm ground is still around that area. And that's definitely home. And then, you know, from there, I went on and K-Stater, proud K-Stater. And I got there and I said, hey, I'm interested in startups. And, you know, this is several decades ago, and they didn't really know what that meant. And so I had to kind of create my own curriculum and say, you know, I'm interested in how do you start companies? And so it's cool because now you go back and there's an entire department that does this. And one of my good friends, Chad Jackson, who I went to school with, is running that department. And we're seeing kids come out of that with some exceptional skills and looking to start companies. And that is just amazingly cool to me. And then, you know, sort of from there, went and did technology work in Kansas City and traveled all over the country doing that. And probably one of the more fundamental experiences in my background is I had a chance to go to Washington, D.C. and work for Jerry Moran, doing ag policy for him. And that was eye-opening. I mean, you grow up on a farm and you think about farming that way, and then you realize there's a whole nother policy and there's an element to it. And there's the global ramifications of trade and these sorts of things. And so I learned a tremendous amount in that, and had a chance to visit with farmers sort of all over the country. And I really cherish that time. So anyway, came back and did 3 startup companies. HitchPin's my third one. And really, we can get into this later, but I would say the driving force behind this was, I was in DC and we were talking about rural communities and, how do you promote that kind of thing? And I can remember coming home one night and telling Leah, I said, what we need is somebody to actually start companies and employ people and take the risk, and they might fail or they might succeed. And she said, okay, Trevor, you're going to put your money where your mouth is. My wife is very direct when it comes to that kind of thing. And so that was our real chance to come back and do that. So that's the path that we've chosen. And like I said, it's been quite an adventure so far on that. That actually probably leads us into, I love the name that you came up with on this podcast, Emily, the plow and the pencil. So, the Eisenhower quote, farming looks mighty easy when your plow is a pencil and you're 1,000 miles from a cornfield. That is such a cool quote. I had that above my computer when I was in DC, and I'd look at it every day and think about it. And so I just love that you did that. And of course, you've got kind of family connections to Eisenhower.
I know.
Which is super cool.
So cool. My one fun fact, right? Like claim to fame. A distant relative of Ike.
It's cool. I grew up 10 miles north of where Eisenhower grew up. And so, to see a man that came from very humble roots and ended up leading a country is just amazing. But, Eisenhower wrote 2 letters right before D-Day. And one letter was the success of D-Day. And that letter, which the world ended up seeing, was all about how the troops did their very best. All the credit goes to them. And I'm so proud of their efforts. I mean, in summary, it's essentially, it's in Abilene and it's in Eisenhower's museum. But the letter the world didn't see is the one that was also in his desk that said, D-Day has failed. I'm again paraphrasing. D-Day has failed. Our troops did everything that they were asked to do. I used the best information I had at the time, but the entire, I bear responsibility for this failure. And I mean, talk about real leadership there. I mean, that kind of stuff just blows you away. And, luckily the world saw the first letter, but the fact that he had written that second letter and taken responsibility for it, it just kind of shows the type of individual he was. So anyway, sorry for the Ike, but I could talk about Eisenhower all day. He's a great,
absolutely
amazing person.
Absolutely. Yes. And, you mentioned about this being a startup and you felt so convicted to coming back to Kansas and giving it a shot. So tell us a little bit more about the premise of why HitchPin. What is it that made you think this is what I want to put my chips on?
Absolutely. Well, I think it started like a lot of startups get off the ground. You actually see a need that is real and that impacts you. And so I saw that clearly. So my folks farm around Abilene. And I remember, my dad would sell hay sometimes and then not get paid for several months. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it would sell quickly and sometimes it would sell slowly. And I kept thinking, gosh, there just has to be a better way for this. And, we had sort of studied how all these industries are being changed by marketplaces. And I kept thinking, why hasn't this happened in agriculture? We now know the reason why is because, as you know, Emily, ag is so complicated. There's so many things that going on that it's just hard to get something like that set up. But we really took a look at that, and it's cool because I remember going to my dad and saying, hey, I think we're going to build a marketplace, and you'll be able to sell things like hay on it. And I remember him going, why do we need a marketplace for this? And he was one of the first people to list hay on HitchPin, and it sold right away. And the money was deposited in his bank account like 2 days later. And he goes, Trevor, I see why you're building this. And I thought, okay, that's vindication for all this stuff. So he's been wonderful, and it's certainly helped our operation. And I think, when you're building things that have a real impact on people's lives, then you're doing something good. So, anytime you're building something new like this, there's a lot to it. And so, he's been so great because he's been a guinea pig in many of these situations, and we get a little bit better, and then we find we need to improve this piece. And so I love the fact that, we're to a stage now where it's pretty streamlined, and he's able to post things and they're selling. And then of course, he's been nothing but complimentary to the team. So it's pretty cool. I used to get the late night, customer support calls. Hey, I'm trying to upload this picture. And now it's now
they go right to the team members.
It's going pretty smooth now. So awesome. I'm super proud of them and the sort of operation that they've built. He was a farmer. My mom was a PE teacher. And so, it's a great environment to grow up with. He's been able to sell items, beyond just the local network. So it's not just the 5 people around him. Yeah. Now, he's able to reach people that he would have never known before. So, that's of all the things, it's just great to build things that work and that can be useful to people. I mean, that's the most fun part of this whole process.
Yeah. So what would you say is the best part? I'm sure it comes with plenty of challenges, but what would you say is the best part of being a startup founder?
Oh, that's a great question. I'd say there's probably 3 elements that I think mean the most. And this probably is not, I'm guessing this isn't just about, this is probably pretty common across folks that are out building things, whether it's a tech startup or whether it's starting a new farm or whatever it is. But at least the things that really matter to me, one is it is amazing to build something. I think maybe it's because we grew up with machinery that we were always repairing and things like that. But I've just always really appreciated the idea that you build, you get a chance to build something. And I'm not a great musician. I had a terrible solo in middle school playing the trombone. I mean, it was awful. So I'm not a great musician. I'm probably not a great painter or anything. So I guess part of what I see about kind of entrepreneurial activities is you get to create something. You get this blank canvas, and that probably ties into the second piece of this, which is you get to work with amazing people. And in particular, you get to work with people that, they see the world again for what it can be. Yeah. And it's such a fun way to live when you're thinking, okay, the world is here, but where can we be, in the future? And to be surrounded by that is really the second thing that I just absolutely love about this. And then probably the last one is really, what impact do we leave? Life is pretty short, and do you have a chance to actually do something that can make somebody else's life better? And the thing I love about HitchPin is we're attacking one of those fundamentally important areas. It's like, food is a human right. And so being able to do anything that improves that food system and the people behind that food system, being able to support them, that's something that I think is incredibly motivating for the team. We wake up sort of every day and go, okay, we're going to help the people that are feeding the rest of us. I mean, that's an amazingly cool mission to do. So those 3 things.
Okay. I have to ask you, I'm going to go a little bit out into left field here.
Okay.
What's been the biggest surprise in building HitchPin? What just were you like, whoa, I did not anticipate that coming.
Oh boy. Well, there's a surprise every day, Emily, as you know. It's like, holy cow, I didn't realize, that was going to be a thing. I would say we knew it was going to be complicated. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, we're trying to do something really simple. We're trying to connect somebody a buyer and a seller, or somebody that needs a service and somebody that can offer that service. So in very simple terms, we're trying to do something like that. The complexity behind it is just unbelievable. And probably one of the coolest moments I've had, and this is actually a couple of years ago, is I'm sitting in a room with our team, and at this point we're really moving, and we've got people kind of reporting on their elements of the team. And I just remember sitting back going, wow, this is amazing work, and it's complicated work. And there's no way that just one or two people could do this. And we have to have specialized talent. And, that was, as a founder, that was pretty cool, because you realize this is way bigger than anything that you could do on your own. Yeah. But it also is, is amazingly complex to build. So how do we make it simple for the producer? But farming is a complex business. As you know, it's genetics and capital management, and, all these elements. So, yeah.
The thing that I think people comment the most is how comprehensive HitchPin is. Agriculture, like you said, is complex, and there's marketplaces that exist for different segments of the industry, but that's not HitchPin. HitchPin is a full service marketplace, and it's a place where not only can you discover either a price as a seller, or a product as a buyer, or a service, but you can transact, which is got to be incredibly complex to figure out.
It is. And we knew right away, in a lot of consumer businesses, they focus on one particular item. Like we're just going to buy and sell this. But we knew pretty early on with HitchPin that, what a farmer needs or a rancher needs in July is different than what they need in October. And so if you want to truly help, meet those needs, you've got to have a marketplace that can do a lot of different things. That makes it infinitely more complicated to build. But I think it's the right thing to do. And it also just allows people to sort of have an experience with what we're doing in multiple times during the year. So yeah, I think ag marketplaces in general are the wave of the future. I think just like other industries, we're going to see that take place. And we're already seeing some amazingly cool things, like a producer in Western Kansas selling hay to a buyer in Wyoming. Because of the drought situation in Wyoming, there's not enough hay, and that guy was going to have to liquidate his herd. And the fact that we were able to make that connection, get hay up there, and save that guy's herd, that's really cool. And that would not have happened without this sort of extended reach of what we're doing. So, the complexity is worth it, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Our family's in the farming business also, and I think what's really cool is we aren't just in one segment. We are raising hogs and cattle, but we are also putting up hay. And sometimes we have more than we need, and sometimes we need to buy some, but we're also having to upgrade or add to our equipment regimen, And so it's really awesome to think about the fact that we're building something that people can come and find whatever they need in ag. And the thing that surprises me is the number of new categories that we spin up. We'll get a call from someone who's, like in a completely different segment of agriculture than one that I grew up with. And it's really cool to be able to provide a service for them too. So
I love that on two fronts. One is, I kind of joke that if Amazon started with books, we started with something equally sexy, hay, which is interesting because that's like a $14 to $20 billion industry, and it's totally fragmented, and buyers and sellers haven't had a great opportunity to connect. And so, it's interesting. We started there, but then we realized, okay, well, the people that we're connecting on hay also need to be connected on livestock, and they need to be connected on grain. and equipment and all those things. And so, in the early days of HitchPin, it was a real technological leap to build something that allows for what you're just saying, where somebody calls up and said, hey, we need a new category. And sometimes within a few minutes, we can spin that up. The technological lift to do that was pretty intense. But I think ultimately that's a good service to our customers for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure someone out there listening to our Plow and Pencil podcast has an idea brewing in their head, and they're approaching how they could solve the problems of other people in a unique way and be innovative within their industry. What advice would you give to that person?
I would say two things. One is I'm pulling for you because anytime you're creating something new like this, it's a lot of work. And probably one of the best pieces of advice that I've received and has really rung true is find other people that are building stuff and that have been through this. And that way, you can share notes. It's usually a bi-directional type of relationship where, hey, I've got this challenge here and you've solved this one over here. And there's a lot of the very best conversations that I've had are just sharing notes with other people that are building. And they also tend to lower the barriers of, worrying about what somebody's going to think about them because everybody that's building a company or a farm or anything else runs into the exact same thing. So find like-minded people and try to provide value back to them. So, people have definitely helped me and HitchPin along the way. And, we do everything possible to try to pay that back through the next generation of people that are out building stuff. And I think you'll find a lot of the people that are doing this kind of thing, they're not really doing it for the money. They're doing it to create something and make the world a little better. And they feel this obligation to sort of give back in the way that they've received help. So that's probably the biggest one. The second piece is just do it. Just jump in and do it. Behind me, this poster here is the Theodore Roosevelt quote, "Man in the arena." And I know you have that. You have the same quote, Emily, in your house too. But this was printed by a board member of mine. I used to say that quote so much. He's like, "Okay, I'm just going to print you the quote, and it's going to, you can frame it." But I would highly encourage, if you're looking to build anything, highly encourage you to take a look at that quote. And essentially, it's there's the cheap seats out there where the audience is looking, and a lot of times they're criticizing things, but the folks that are actually in the arena, actually building things and working hard, I mean, it's a tough place to be. But that's where the needle is moved, is not in the cheap seats spectating, but, in the arena. And I love that the end of that quote that says, so your place shall never be with those cold and timid souls that know neither victory nor defeat. I mean, Roosevelt actually failed in farming and then went on to be a president of the country. So, he didn't give up. And certainly I think about that quote almost every day.
Yes, I do too. Our appreciation for presidents comes up in our team meetings, which we have appropriately coined the team in the arena.
Yeah. And
you're exactly right. It's fun to be down in the trenches with people who just have this fire in their belly, who just, they want to figure things out. And it's a joy to be working on, and it's hard and it's infuriating some days. And it is the best work
it's
to be working on.
A roller coaster, but it's wonderful.
It is. Okay, so let's take a step back and to use a term I'm sure that you are quite familiar with from your love of aviation. Let's go to the 30,000 foot level. What's the biggest hurdle that you think the ag industry will face in the next, let's say 6 months to a year?
Ooh, well, 6 months to a year. I mean, we're in the middle of some pretty interesting global uncertainty right now. So, yeah, I mean, we've got macroeconomic conditions that are challenging. We've got inflation has really risen, and what that does to commodity prices and input prices. Farmers always seem to get stung on the input prices. So I think that's a big thing. We've got, sort of conflict among nations happening now, and how that will impact trade across the country. I mean, that's an interesting thing I think about agriculture is it moves so fast. Like things are constantly evolving. And so there's some very near-term things I think we can all pay close attention to. And I assume the second part of that question is what's the long term?
Yes, exactly.
What's the next level? And I really look at it like waves. So, you actually see these waves that are about ready to hit food production. And one of those waves is demographic waves. So the average age of the farmer is somewhere around 58 and a half years old. In Kansas, I think it's closer to 60. And so you've got this wave where a lot of the folks in my generation weren't able to come back to the farm because it couldn't support two families. And now the challenge is who will be that next generation.
Yeah.
I think that's going to cause a lot of interesting things, a lot of challenges, frankly, from a consolidation standpoint. All that is happening at the exact same time that you mentioned something else where the global population is growing really fast. So how are we going to feed 2 billion more people with fewer people actually farming? I mean, I think the world is worried about a lot of things right now. But I think the meeting this challenge of food production is actually one of the biggest things that faces humans over the next 2 decades. And so that's partly why I love what we're doing, because we're whether we do this or whether somebody else is involved with this, I just hope there's folks working on this kind of thing. With 4 kids, I want a world where we're not worried about fighting over food and water in the future. And that's what's at stake here. So there are some big challenges out there, but, I'm also an optimist, and I believe that, folks can rise to this challenge, and hopefully the tools that we're building can be part of that overall solution.
Okay. So let's drop down in altitude. Tell me what your pulse is on the environment here, in Kansas today and in the Midwest, and go broadly because our listeners are from all across the country. Yeah. But what's your pulse on what ag's facing right now? What are the opportunities?
The opportunities, so I like what you said there. I mean, we have HitchPin community members now across the entire country, which is pretty cool.
Really cool.
And listers in 49 states. We're still missing Hawaii. So if anybody's listening for Hawaii, we need to get some cattle listed out there or something like that. But I think part of this is that squeeze. Mm-hmm. So much of agriculture has been this squeeze towards vertical integration. It's like, we got to get bigger. We got to, or on the flip side of that, a very narrow niche market type work. And a lot of the folks in the middle are really getting squeezed. And so I think the opportunity really that's out there, and again, hopefully this is something that we can help with, is, rather than this sort of race towards consolidation, and sort of vertical integration, what happens if we can break this into a network? And so now I'm a producer that doesn't want to own a combine, but I do want to own the planter. And, can I keep my planter running and then hire somebody else on the combining side? Or can I find a new market that isn't just accepting commodity pricing from the same sort of things, the same sort of channels that I've always used? And I think that's exciting. I mean, farmers have always been price takers, on both inputs and on what they sell. And so I love the idea that we can actually use a marketplace. And I would say this regardless of HitchPin, the idea that they can differentiate how they sell things, where they buy them, where they sell them. I think that's a tremendous opportunity. And then also just how do they look at resource allocation and hire the things that they can hire and save that money for other things. So I think farming is going to dramatically change in the next certainly 10 years. And in the short run, I think to your point, it's how do we remain viable in these communities as producers, and sort of pick up on those tools that will help us get there. And I like your elevation or your altitude angle to this. So the bush plane that I fly is not a high flying fast machine. It's a bug crusher, and so I like it because it's at an altitude where you can see how interconnected the world is, but you can still see the detail of it. You can still see the individual farms and the communities that are down there at this sort of 5,000 foot level. But yet you can see, hey, this is all part of a bigger connected system. And probably the last thing I'll say on that is I'm always amazed. So my mom was up at the Mayo Clinic, and I would fly up there to visit her. And it's amazing when you do that, you're flying over hours and hours of cornfields and soybean fields and other things. And you go, this is just a miracle that producers can harvest all. I mean, it's an absolute miracle what humans have been able to do with agriculture. And the fact that it can get done it still blows me away to this day.
Yes, a masterpiece that you can see from the sky. Absolutely.
Very cool.
Well, we are excited to share that art with our audience, both those who are actively involved in agriculture and those who aren't, and who are just uniquely curious about where their food and where their fuel comes from. And I'm excited to be able to have guests that can paint part of that picture.
I love it. And I would say everybody at some level is connected to this. We've all come at some generation back from some sort of an ag relationship. And of course we all eat. So the fact that, people care about where their food comes from and how it got there. And, I think it's one of those subjects that crosses all demographics, all ages, all locations. It's an important element of being human.
So leave our listeners with this. What is one thing that you wish everyone knew about HitchPin?
I'd say the biggest thing is just, we've got a team here that is dedicated on two fronts. One, and this is very genuine. One is how do we wake up and make the world a little bit better for the people that are producing our food? Like how can we? And that is a huge motivator. I mean, Emily, as you know, we've got a large part of the team that comes from that kind of background, and there's a real skin in the game to get this right.
Yes.
A real authenticity, I would say, and an authenticity born out of necessity. This isn't just a financial thing. It's like how do we do something good here? So that's one end of it. And the other side of the team that I think is fascinating is what we've already talked about. It's the folks that are looking at the big picture and like, we've got to get this food system right. We've got to be more efficient. The fact that so much food is wasted that shouldn't be. So if we're going to hit that 9 billion people mark, we got to be working on this stuff. And so I guess just letting folks know that this is a real group of people working sort of tirelessly to actually build something useful. And we're also a no ego shop. So if there are things that we can do better or things that we need to add, there's a reason we call this kind of a community, is because we want to get this right. And whoever gets this right really sets the tone for how this technology will play out for years to come. And I want it done in the right way. So I'm very grateful for the investors and for the team members that have made HitchPin what it is today.
Awesome. Did I give you enough time to think about how much the world's farmers are going to have to increase the amount of food produced to feed those 9 billion people?
I believe it is somewhere around 70% increase in food production.
Well done. Well done.
Are they dead on?
Yes, dead on. 70%. That blows my mind.
It's I'd actually seen that number of, it's been a while back, and it blows your mind to think about that. Like,
yes,
humans have never, and you didn't give me that question beforehand.
No.
Humans have never had to increase that much in that short of time.
Yeah.
At least from the standpoint of the number of mouths to feed. So it's a highly, highly motivating force for our team, for sure. I have a question for you, Emily.
Uh-oh. The roles have been reversed.
I guess obviously you grew up in ag production and are doing that still today. And that's actually one of the endearing qualities about you, that you can be talking to Emily, and she's come up with a strategy of how we're going to talk to some producers. And at the same time, she's actually pulling a pig, and that sort of grit and grace, I think is an amazing quality. But when you think about the HitchPin community, how do we connect people? How do you envision what ultimately the goal should be here on creating a community and, sort of the end goal here? You're heavily involved in that, and your team is running elements of how do we create something useful.
Yeah. So, you're exactly right. I grew up watching how notoriously humble farmers and ranchers are, and still to this day, very much so. Yet we are so committed to the consumers who are using our products or consuming our products to understand the value of that product, right, from start to finish. And I think our goal is to support the people who wake up and think about that every day. And if we can make a piece of their day a little easier and a little more efficient and a little more profitable, so that they can focus on some of those other things and maybe welcome that group of school kids out to their farm and show them this is where your food comes from. It doesn't come from this magic, place where all of a sudden a pizza is there, and ready. I think it's so important that, future generations have an appreciation for agriculture. And so if what the HitchPin community does is connect people that they didn't know before, or allows them to continue to welcome back the next generation to their operation, I know that's my family's goal, is giving something for our kids to be able to do one day. And then I would say we're successful.
I love that answer. So that's why I think that's why we're having success in sort of building this, and it's so cool to see that kind of go across the country, and I love it. Yeah. So
Trevor, thank you so much for not only your vision, but your support, and for most importantly, joining us for Plow and Pencil today.